The Bible tells us of the Antichrist in John's first letter. Here we read, "You have heard that the Antichrist is coming." Now let's investigate a passage in Daniel chapter 8. A king will arise, insolent and skilled in intrigue. His power will be mighty, but not by his own power. Could this king be the Antichrist? It says that his power does not originate from himself. Compare this to Revelation 13:2. The dragon gave the beast his power. The beast refers to the Antichrist, and the identity of the dragon is found in Revelation 12:9. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan. In other words, the Antichrist derives his power from Satan. The Apostle Paul's testimony concerning the Antichrist is in agreement. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with the work of Satan. This certainly lines up with what Daniel 8:24 says. His power will be mighty, but not by his own power. Continuing in Daniel 8, we read, "He will even oppose the Prince of Princes, but he will be broken without human agency." This seems to be reflected in what Paul wrote about the Antichrist. "Then that lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth, and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming." This ties in with what an angel said to Daniel, "Son of man, understand that the vision pertains to the time of the end." It certainly looks like the king who is described in Daniel 8 is the Antichrist. Let's go to the beginning of Daniel 8 and trace the origin of this man. Here Daniel relates a vision he saw. "Suddenly a goat with a prominent horn between his eyes came from the west, crossing the whole earth, without touching the ground. The goat became very great, but at the height of his power his large horn was broken off, and in its place 4 prominent horns grew up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Out of one of them came another horn, which started small but grew in power to the south and to the east and toward the beautiful land." Later in the chapter we are given the explanation of the vision. The shaggy goat is the king of Greece, and the large horn between his eyes is the first king. The large horn undoubtedly represents Alexander the Great, who founded the Greek Empire in the 4th century BC. Here is the interpretation of the vision Daniel received concerning Alexander's empire. The 4 horns that replaced the one that was broken off represent 4 kingdoms that will emerge from his nation, but will not have the same power. After the death of Alexander the Great, 4 of his generals took over the empire. They divided it between themselves in 4 kingdoms. Daniel 8:9 says, "Out of one of them came another horn." We are told the king whose power is not his own, and who will finally be broken by the Prince of Princes, will arise from one of the 4 parts the ancient Greek Empire was divided into. The rest of verse 9 says, "The horn started small, but grew in power to the south and to the east, and toward the beautiful land," which is Israel. Daniel 11 tells us more precisely from which of the 4 divisions this king comes from. In the beginning of the chapter, we again read about the empire of Alexander the Great, which was broken up into 4 parts. Then a mighty king will appear, who will rule with great power and do as he pleases. After he has appeared, his empire will be broken up and parceled out toward the 4 winds of heaven. The rest of the chapter concentrates on 2 of the 4 parts, right up to the time of the end. These 2 kingdoms are called the south and the north. These phrases are used because of the geographical relation of these two kingdoms to the land of Israel. The south corresponds to Egypt, and the north corresponds to Syria with adjacent areas. Toward the end of Daniel 11, we read that the king of the north will set up the abomination that causes desolation, thereby desecrating the sanctuary. Jesus said in Matthew 24, "When you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever shall." In other words, the abomination of desolation will begin the great tribulation just before Christ returns. The king in Daniel 8, who appears to be the Antichrist, is identified in Daniel 11 as the end-time king of the north, who causes the abomination of desolation. This indicates the Antichrist will come from within the area of ancient Syria. Today this area is comprised of modern Syria, Turkey, Lebanon, Iraq, etc. All these countries are predominantly Muslim. Therefore, we have every reason to believe the Antichrist will rise from within a Muslim state in the Middle East. The Bible says the Antichrist is coming. With this in mind, let's take a look at a vision the prophet Daniel had. He saw a horn with eyes and a mouth, uttering great boasts. Daniel is told the horn represents a king who will speak out against the Most High. Could this king be the Antichrist? Revelation 13 says of the end-time beast, "There was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words, and he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God." Let's look at another similarity between the horn and the beast. Daniel saw the horn waging war with the saints and overpowering them. Revelation 13 says of the beast, "It was also given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them." Daniel is told the king will wear down the saints of the Highest One, and they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. Revelation 13 says of the beast, "Authority to act for 42 months was given to him." A time, times, and half a time equals 3.5 years. So does 42 months. Therefore, we can be certain that the horn representing a king in Daniel 7 is the same as the beast representing the Antichrist in Revelation 13. Daniel is shown precisely how this king will arise. In his vision he saw 10 horns, and then another horn, a little one, came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were pulled up by the roots before it. Daniel received the interpretation. He was told, 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones, and will subdue 3 kings. This is how the Antichrist will arise. He will emerge from among 10 kings or state leaders. He will suppress or defeat 3 of them. The 10 horns are on the head of a dreadful beast. Daniel was told the beast represents a kingdom. He was shown that this beast was a 4th beast to arise. Daniel 7:23 says, "The 4th beast will be a 4th kingdom on the earth." In order to see what kingdom this represents, let's first take a look at the 3rd beast. Daniel relates, "It looked like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird, and it had 4 heads. A leopard is known for its sudden attacks, and four wings indicate great speed. A large kingdom that was formed very quickly was the Grecian Empire of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BC. Nothing in history can compare to his rapid gains. He conquered the majority of the lands of the Persian Empire in the course of just 12 years. The four heads on the beast represent the four kingdoms that were carved out of the Grecian Empire when Alexander died at a young age, and four of his generals divided the empire between themselves. Since the third beast represents the Grecian Empire, the fourth beast is the kingdom that came after the Grecian Empire. That kingdom was the Roman Empire. This means the 10 kings will appear from the area of the ancient Roman Empire. We are told, out of this kingdom 10 kings will arise. This map shows the Roman Empire at its largest extent, but can we narrow down the area where the 10 kings rule? Taking a closer look at Revelation 13, we see the Apostle John wrote, "The beast which I saw was like a leopard." This indicates the power base of the Antichrist is associated with the ancient Grecian Empire, represented by the leopard. When we compare this with what we find in Daniel 7 concerning the Roman Empire, it seems to suggest we should be looking at the area the Roman Empire had in common with the Grecian Empire. When we merge the area of the Grecian Empire with that of the Roman Empire, we see that the landmass both controlled covered the eastern part of the Roman Empire and the western part of the Grecian Empire. Therefore, I conclude that we can expect the 10 states or kingdoms to be situated in the general area of the Middle East. Today, this area is made up of predominantly Muslim countries. When the 10 end-time kings are in place, another king will arise among them and subdue 3 of them. This man will be the Antichrist.